And perhaps we can wait for a few more minutes to see if we're going to have more people attending. In the meantime, I'd like to ask you if it's okay with you to record the session. Do you mind it being recorded?
In our language, in Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian, etc. And English. Dakle, snimat ćemo, izgleda da niko nema ništa protiv, što je super. Približavamo se famoznih...
So no one has anything against it, and that's great. So it's going to be 10:03 soon. That's the time when it would be really great to start.
I'm ready when you're ready.
Martina is ready when the rest of the world is ready. That's how I understood it. Few more seconds.
Nine. You're now listening.
Ja ću govorit naš jezik.
I'm going to be speaking in our language because we have invited the media as well. Not sure if they're going to respond in large numbers, but I think it's very important that your efforts, if possible, be followed by the media and transmitted by the media. So at the very beginning of this conference called Photographs and Memories, the new approaches to the memory culture, and the opening of the exhibition, look into the past through the prism of the photographs, would start by saying thank you, first of all, to Alice Straniero, who came with this concept. And we got the financial support for it, which was a great thing. And I'd like to thank Sandra, Vitaljić, and Saša Kralj, who took us through this process. And this was a great thing. And due to the great activist and professor academic experience that they have, which brought together various, and I lost her for a second, but we managed to go to various sites of suffrage and remembrance, because we always try to find the most fit way to preserve those memories and to try to avoid those events going into oblivion. So we're going to try to help our societies to have a better quality approach to the past and to deal with the suffrage in a better way. The suffrage of all of those that have suffered in the camps, other suffrage sites from World War II, and the Document and the other organizations work into other layers of remembrance. But here the focus is into World War II, and at a time when we are slowly losing the direct witnesses of those times and events, it is for sure very important to find the ways to deal with the past, to tackle the past. So this perspective through the lenses of the photographs seemed to be very interesting. So now I'm interested to know, how was it for you? We'll learn a little bit about the process of the selection of the photos that you have yourselves, and you have had some time to give some feedback on that as well. But this approach, when you have to concentrate into selection of the photographs, maybe you can share this with your colleagues and the others interested, which brings us to the moment when we have to think if this methodology would be useful for you, first of all, that are participants of this endeavor, but also for the colleagues that work in the human rights organizations or belong to the academic staff or deal with film arts or any other form, or when we take into account the attitude towards Shoah or Holocaust or the suffrage of the partisans are the others that fought against the fascists, be that the partisans here or the Italian partisans or the White Roses in Germany. And that is an issue that is relevant also for the teachers of elementary and secondary schools. And that's why we tended to invite a wider public. Of course, some managed to participate, some others didn't have the chance to. That's why we're going to record those sessions into our language and English. And later you can watch those recordings and conversations, presentations, discussions. And we can go through them today, but also in the days and weeks that are in front of us, especially in the week when we mark the 70th anniversary of the start of World War II in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. That has for sure affected all of the post-Yugoslav countries, but also Italy, Germany, and Austria, in forms that are unbelievable, that somehow either World War II didn't end up fully, and some of the processes of neglection and oblivion are still ongoing. And for some of the countries where we believe that they have relatively successfully faced the past, such as Germany, you that had the chance to visit those sites of suffrage, you could understand quickly that you could encounter those forgotten sites or spots that no one visits. And of course, this is not only important because we are interested to deal with the past because of the sake of history, but because it is important to bring the relations between people to the human level, regardless to what race, ethnic group, or marginalized group do we belong. And all of our societies still do struggle in some various forms, because we do live through various waves of revisionism. For instance, in Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and so on and so forth, where our partners in this project do come from since 1991 and so on. We are witnesses to various forms of attempts that everything that is related to those camps will be limited to some very short-minded narratives and left into forgottenness. And how can we maintain nonetheless this into the focus of our activity? And this is a chance, which we call it an event of meetings, this is just one of the events of these meetings, and I'm happy to announce the other ones, because we're going to have public campaigns, and all of you that are today here, I invite to get involved here through social networks as well. And in summer we are awaiting an exhibition and a seminar in Udine in Italy, also in Ljubljana later in fall. And I hope that this is going to be organized physically. The pandemics are really hard to foresee, but I hope we're going to have some space to organize something like that. I won't go any longer with this. I'm going to give floor to Alice. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be all the time with you, because we have another initiative that we have presented on the 10th of April, which is the date when the independent state of Croatia has been proclaimed. We have imposed the issue of setting a plate on the building where the Radio Zagreb is now located, and the independent state of Croatia was proclaimed. And today, in regard to this, we have a very important meeting, which is going to let us know if the institution, which is today located there, that is USKOK, the Special Prosecutor's Office for Fight Against Crime and Organized Crime and Organized Corruption, or Corruption and Organized Crime. All of it is quite pretty organized, but nonetheless, we are going to talk about this kind of critical event from World War II in the cities like Zagreb, and bringing plates with information, because right now they don't have that information, which would give people some knowledge on what happened here. Zagreb has its memory site called Dotorčina, which is not visited by many people. but the ones that visited in the forest of the Torščina can visit those sites and monuments, but all of those monuments that are sites that remember the victims in a dignified way lack plates that inform the people that the Ustasha, with the support of Nazis and fascists, have killed thousands of people. And this is the feature of the issue that we have in Croatia and the other post-Yugoslav countries. I think the situation in Italy might be similar. And this is a situation that you, through your photos, have attempted to do something. And I would like very much to have a similar approach in some other context, perhaps in some schools, perhaps in some universities, perhaps in some art colonies or summer schools. And that's why I'm very much interested to know what do you think about it. And I would like to thank you once again wholeheartedly and give the floor to Vitaljić in the hope that we're going to be able to see as many presentations as possible. And please, Vitaljić, give us, maybe you can be able to tell us a bit more.
Hello, hi, everybody. I will continue in English because it's just so easier for me than to try with Croatian in the circumstances. Thank you all for following, and in particular, thanks to our participants that today were willing to present their experiences and reflections with us. But before going to the presentation, I would like to ask to Saša and Sandra, our trainers, if they can shortly maybe introduce us to the exhibition that you organize, that for now, as Vesa mentioned, is only online, but that we hope that is going to be also in a physical, well, it will be in a physical form. We hope that we will be able to open it in Udine in November. So maybe Saša, if you would like to say something on this exhibition.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Vesna, for the opportunity. I'm speaking in my name and Sandra's name. I'm sure that I know that this was a very inspiring process for both of us, even though impeded by the fact that we had to be online instead of live with all of the participants. I had a privilege to be with a group of participants on location. So that added a dimension that unfortunately Sandra was not able to have. What there was for everybody, I mean, for most of the people who know and who've been participants, first, thank you for really allowing intimate space to be revealed and to be shared with all of us, and to be exposed to, you know, maybe discussions and brainstormings about the visual language and everything else. That's not always easy, because intimacy is something that is very, very gentle and should be protected. So what came out in two parts, so the structure was that we had two parts of the presentations and preparations workshop before we went, all of us, to locations in different countries. And then we had a debrief or selection process with some sort of workshop style feedback and analysis of what was happening, sort of debriefing. In that process, and as a result of that process, Sandra and I, we came with a little bit different division of exhibited works, even now on Instagram, and with the help of Alice, who went through all of that together. We decided that we identified common threads. So there was a number of participants who recorded and who were struck by the negligence, by that neglect, in the same way how what Vesna said, many witnesses, eyewitnesses of the events and times are leaving us. Now the physical remains or commemoration places are also being pushed to neglect and to some kind of forgetfulness outside of the social or societal memory. And a lot of the participants were definitely touched or surprised and wanted to reflect and document those aspects of losing the memory. The second part that we identified was sort of reclamation of the memory. So of course that many of the localities had at some stage either being had monuments or artworks or in some other way being reclaimed in order to be put into the public domain in order to be the memory, public memory. But nowadays they are also on a front line of contested memory. So and a lot of the participants had because they of course like most of us, we are born after the Second World War, and we don't have a direct connection with it. So we needed to find ways to reclaim the relationship towards those events, but also towards remains and commemorations of those events. And those a lot of the people tried to find relationship through visual language in reclaiming those memories through monuments or through places of atrocities that happened during the Second World War. And then we identified the third, which actually I think made us really happy, that people, regardless of the state of the monument or what is happening, are trying through exploration either of personal archives or those sites that they visited, to find a way to a healing, to kind of overcome the negative aspects of being stuck in a suffering, in a sort of toxic part of empathy, but to develop a creative and constructive and transforms individually, thus healing, or has a potential then to also serve as a transformatory and healing aspect of a society in any part. And those are the images that kind of were grouped in a third group of the as a healing memories. This was the process that came out from the debriefing and from work with the participants and between sort of all of us who facilitated this event. So I think that's enough. For as you can see in the chat, you can see the exhibition on Instagram and those kind of chapters that we kind of put together, groups that Alice put on, and I hope you will find your own way to communicate with those images and to allow them to speak to you. So that's it. I think it's time for Alicia to take over and give the word to participants if
Sasha.
Sandra doesn't want to add anything.
Thanks, Sasha, very much. Then we can start with our presentations. So today you are going to see 6 presentations from our participants, and the first one will be from Martina. And I just want to add that you can use the chat in every moment for any question that you might have, or also to, I know that also the other participants are with us today following. So if you want to add something, or you have any comment, just write it in the chat and let us know. Martina, you can start if you want.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you, Vesna and Sasha, also for this beautiful opportunity. I think we were all very lucky to be part of this project. I think it's super important. I think there should be a lot more of these kinds of projects, because it's a topic that is talked about but not often enough. And I think that's one of the reasons why the state of certain monuments that you've mentioned is the way that it is. I think that is beautiful, that we should always encourage this conversation in the society, and I think that's really valuable work. So I would just like to thank you for doing what you're doing. Anyways, so now I'll start sharing my screen, which I hope I will succeed in. It's okay. Okay. So first, because there are a lot of participants that are not Croatian, I would just like to give a short introduction into the state of how it was in times of the Second World War here in Croatia. There were a lot of camps. So here's just a little, not a little, but a very long list of concentration camps or detention and immigration camps in Croatia during the Second World War. They were they were divided by Misha Dervić and Ivan Fiumić in 2008 in a book called Croatia in Camps from 41 to 45. And there are really a lot of camps, as you can see. So those that we have visited, a small fragment of what was really happening. And also, I mean, Jasenovac is the most the biggest one, so that's why it's given so much attention. And then this is one part, and then this is the second part. So there were those were all of the camps in Croatia during the Second World War, when the independent state of Croatia was here in Croatia. Okay. Anyways, so this is the group of Jasenovac camps. So there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can see, concentration kind of groups of concentration camps. Jasenovac, which we have visited on the day that we went on the field trip. Those were all of the locations that we have visited. So we have visited the Jasenovac memorial site, which is kind of it is the place where most of the camps were, but then now there are no physical traces in most cases of the camp that was there. There is only nature, a monument, and a memorial site, a museum dedicated to the camp. This is inside of the museum. Those are lists of all of the names of people whose lives have been taken in the concentration camp Jasenovac. So they're written on these panels that are hanging from the walls, from the ceiling. Anyways, so the first location that I've already mentioned we have visited is Jasenovac. Jasenovac was a camp that was it was operating during the Second World War, and it held mostly Serbs, but also Jews and Muslims and Roma people. So it was, a place where the independent state of Croatia took all of the people that thought that they are not to be part of that Ustasha and the fascist and the Dachau regime. So, and it was divided into like a work camp and then also like a death camp. It was a system that was taken from the Nazis, and what it was like. Taken. So before that, what I wanted to say before that, there was like a factory there and important factory place before the Second World War. And then when the Second World War started, and when the independent state of Croatia took over Croatia, that place was kind of confiscated and used as a concentration camp. So it was one of the reasons why it was there, because there were already buildings there. So these are the images that I took of the place where the camp was. With the reason why I took these photos in that way was, firstly, it was interesting to me how just a small change of perspective can change the way we look at a memorial site. So on the left, you can see an image of a field. It can be any field, really. It's just a beautiful field on a sunny day, and it kind of like invites you to go camping with your family, or I don't know, just walk around and enjoy the nature. And then when you have just one small symbol or something that is kind of like, attributed to that specific site, it changes the meaning instantly, because this is the monument of Bogdanović, the flower, which was made in 1966. And it was, so Bogdanović was an artist, and he was the one who kind of like did interventions, artistical interventions on the site, on the memorial site. And it is a very known monument. It is instantly attributed to the location of Jasenovac. So when you see this photo, you immediately know where this field is, and then as all of a sudden it becomes a memorial site. You can for me, or at least I can speak in my name, I feel completely different when looking at this photo as per when I would be just looking at this photo of someone said Windows desktop background, which it is kind of. So it is, for me, it is interesting how a place changes instantly with just one single monument, while and with photography you can do this, where you can kind of manipulate a certain site where something is just like taken out of context very easily, or the context it is attributed to it very easily as well. Also, kind of on that note, I was playing around with concepts in general, because I found on my phone while I was there, completely unintentionally, that I have these weird effects, and it kind of sparked my imagination, because I was just I was playing around with concepts, like because in when we talk about memorial sites and when we take photos of memorial sites, we usually use techniques. We want to make it as sad and dreary as possible, and that's why those sites look sad and dreary in the photos. But then if we use, like, if we put it like a weird effect of red fields or something, it instantly becomes something completely different. If you know what it is, then it looks still terrible and you know what it is. But if you don't, then still, you can play around with photography in a way that it enhances or decreases the experience of or the emotion of how the person who is looking at the photos is feeling. So the black and white photo would generally more likely be used to document a memorial site or a location. You would never use this like hardcore, I don't know, just like weird effects. So that was like this kind of like a juxtaposition between you know, what we use and then like something completely else that can completely transform the environment. And also when I sent these images to some of the people who didn't know what it was, they were like, oh, it's so beautiful, so magical, the first one, like, you know. So that's like it's really, for me, what was interesting is how you can manipulate with photos, you can manipulate these kinds of things always, I guess. And that's also what but then these are the kind of the Bogdanović also did kind of like this markings on the ground where the mass graves were. It was also part of the installation, so they're here today as well. And for me, they look ominous even in like in whatever effect I used. For me, they have like the but it's just because I know the connotation. I don't know if someone who didn't know would, you know, because when you look at the black and white photo, it kind of is, for me at least very ominous. And I don't know, it's also, you know, you just connect it to something maybe not as nice. But then when you look at the other photos with the colors and everything beautiful, I guess you just feel maybe a bit different. But then also I showed it to my mother and she was like, they all look like the same amount of ominous because she knows what's behind the photos is. But it was interesting for me, so that's like a question as well, like, do you, when does the change in color in photos and like the change in small details, does that like change your perspective or perception, even if you know what the photos show, or does it not? That's like something I was thinking about. Anyways, so that was the first location. There were a lot of other details that maybe the other participants will show when with the group kind of presentations. Anyways, and then the other location was Stara Gradiška, and what's kind of like, so there it was a penitentiary. It was built in late antiquity, and I think, and then in the 17th and 18th century, it's like a place that's I don't know, half an hour from Jasenovac, and it was also functioning as a penitentiary, as a prison for a long time, since the 18th century. But then in times of the independent state of Croatia, it was transformed into death camp, into concentration camp. And in this specific facility, I think women were held. And what struck me there is the lack of kind of like memorialization of the fact that death or concentration camp was there, because there are like so many signs. And it's like it's a square, and around the square is the fortress where the camp was. And there are so many signs related to different topics, but none of them show anything about the concentration camp. For example, do not trespass and stuff like that. You can see the small details here in the photo. And then also like on the square there are graffiti, which here is, I think, the only place where something related to Second World War is like memorialized. So screaming Holocaust grindcore. This is the only place where like so the word Holocaust is mentioned. And then like signs like do not park here, I don't know, or and also since that place was also a penitentiary or like camp in our homeland war, Domovinski rat, I don't know how to translate that, but in the 90s, so that is very like kind of well presented there. The square is called the Square of Croatian Defenders, or I don't know, just homeland defenders. And there is a monument dedicated to that, which, and then for the concentration camp that was there during the times of the Second World War, there's literally nothing about that. which then I took photos of this like signs that are not signs. So this one, for example, was the funniest to me because I don't understand it. It's literally like nothing. And you know, this is a missed opportunity for me. You can literally like take a pen and write something about what was there, you know. It's not that hard to commemorate a site. And the it was talked about that it's really not it's a very one of the curators in Jasenovac, Mihovilovic, said that it's really this is a missed opportunity for people to learn about Croatian history from forever ago up until today, because there are so many layers of history and some are unfortunately completely erased from the site. And then in the end, I will just show the photos that most of our organizers talked about or liked, which do not really show anything in specific, but this is just something, well, this was my division. So the first one was how to manipulate photos, or I guess the second one was to show like what so to kind of document what was like what signs or how the location, blah, blah. Anyways, I don't know if I'm like running out of time or not.
It should be good if you can
summarize.
Okay,
I didn't know.
Sure.
Anyway, and then so these are the photos that I took that are like nothing specific, just mine, kind of like me playing around with concepts, where I saw this thing on the wall which reminded me of a man who is holding his hands up, which is very kind of like for me telling of the things that were happening there. This is in Stara Gradiška, this is in Jasenovac, which this is the place where they were drawing clay from some of the workers in the camp. This used not to be like a lake. There were people who were drawing or just excavating clay from the ground in order to make bricks, and the prisoners, now it's like it looks to me like something is underwater, you know, like the reflection is kind of ominous as well to me. And then so these are all just to me like memories of what happened there, like small I don't know, stories, I guess. And then these two as well. So this is like a face to me of a person in not very in distress or something, you know. And then this is a photo of a chimney, which is has nothing to do with anything. Actually, it's from the Jasenovac Memorial Museum, and the cloud, but it kind of reminded me of we all know the final solution. So even though it did not happen at Jasenovac, it still kind of I guess reminded me of that. So that's it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit more. Anyways, that's it. Thank you. I just will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Martina, very much. I will go on because we are a bit maybe late in our schedule, but if you have any question, please write it in the chat, and we can also discuss with Martina and the others later. So Fe will be next.
Yes, I'm going to start sharing my screen. And I hope it's going to work. Yes.
It works, Faye. It's good.
Okay.
We can see it, yes.
Okay, you can see it. Great. So I'm Faye, I'm from Dachau, and I visited 2 different locations together with my colleagues from the Max Mannheimer Study Center. And we looked at the plantation and the memorial cemetery Leitenberg. And I'm going to start by telling you a bit about those locations because I think they are not well known in general. So I'm going to start with the plantation that was also called herb garden as a euphemistic term that was used by the SS. It was actually a big garden complex or an agricultural area with the nursery and greenhouses and productive land that was used and built from 1938 onwards. And detainees from the concentration camp in Dachau had to build and cultivate, not build, but cultivate medicinal and aromatic herbs there. And that was done in order to be, well, obviously produce medicine, but mostly to be independent from foreign imports. Due to the difficult grounds, the inhumane working condition, and also obviously in combination with general malnutrition and illnesses, there were about 800 deaths on the plantation alone. What I also wanted to point out is that it was actually a big complex. So if you ever come to Dachau and you visit it, you will be surprised because you see only a small area that is still how it was back then. But it was actually a big complex containing maintenance building, a teaching and research institute, and even a shop where people from Dachau could buy the produce there. And most of the actual land is now overbuilt with industrial buildings. So only a small part of the land is still how it was back then, with the greenhouses that I'm going to show you later, and some administrative buildings, but they are not preserved. Yes, that's the plantation. I'm moving on to the Memorial Cemetery Leitenberg. The Leitenberg, just so you know, Berg means hill, so it's just a hill next to Dachau. And in between February and April 1945, due to a shortage of coal, the crematoria couldn't be used anymore. So there was a mass grave digged on the Leitenberg where about 4,000 dead bodies were buried. And after the American liberation, about 2,000 additional bodies of concentration camp detainees were buried there. The site was ignored in the immediate post-war years. And then after international scandal, it was transformed into, or rather redeveloped into a Christian cemetery, also without regard of obviously the various beliefs of the people that were buried there, but it was developed into a official site. Yes, I in general have very mixed feelings about this place because it's not so much part of the official culture of remembrance in Dachau, but we can talk about that later. And I will now move on to just show you some of my pictures and give you a little overview so you can imagine how the place looked like. So generally what I tried to do with the pictures was create like an honest picture about the place, to show how it looks like today, especially because are sites that are not well known. Maybe you have visited the concentration camp in Dachau, but you have probably not been to the Leitenberg or to the Kräutergarten unless you have done like a really good guided visit. And I wanted the viewer to be able to imagine how it looks like today. So I did that. So you can see a greenhouse here. And then I wanted to focus on details and cutouts and also tried to play around with perspectives. I'm not professional in photography, but I just kind of felt like that detailed pictures or cutouts conveyed the atmosphere of the place much better than just taking a picture of some buildings. You don't see a lot in those pictures, but in details, you can see how the place is slowly rotting away, for example. So that's that. And then I have a picture of the Leitenberg. As you can see, it's nearly seems like nice. And that's a collage I did, because on the Leitenberg you can I wanted to, these are actually like memory, like kind of plates for either individual people or countries that hung those up to commemorate all like the French deaths or the dead people from the Netherlands. And I wanted to kind of show how these individual plates create like their own memory on the wall, in contrast to big monuments like the one you find in the concentration camp. Yes, and then I wanted to like show what I actually got from this and what like kind of reflections we made in the group. And the first thing I realized that is not only the case in Dachau, but maybe on some of the other sites as well, is the neglect that you can very obviously see in some of these places. And that was actually kind of not shocking, but I wasn't aware of the extent of that. Because I think in many of the places, there's just a lack of information, of signs, a lack of just context, maybe really. The second thing is the detachment from the past. That's kind of how I called it, because I know I have shown you the picture from the Leitenberg, and there are people going hiking there. And that's what I mean. It's kind of the original meaning of the place is not preserved well enough. And then people use it as something different. And that doesn't make me feel good. Yeah. And then the last thing that is kind of in line with those two is the conflict with the environment. So, but what I mean by that is just that some places, as we have nature, and also I photographed them in the really nice weather, look beautiful, when actually the events that passed there were not. So that's a conflict that I kind of struggled with depicting, because how do you do that when you're in a beautiful place? You can't really show the terrible things that happened there. And yes, so those are my little reflections, and I hope you gained something from my presentation. And I'm gonna stop sharing the screen now.
Thank you, Fe, very much. Yeah, some of these topics also came up with the different groups that we have. So it's interesting to see how some of these features are shared by the different locations that we visited in different countries. And well, again, if you want to add something, say something, maybe we can also add this conversation to the chat, or to possible question for later after your presentations. I would like now to go on to Sabrina.
Yes, here we go. So now I'm trying to Yes, can you see it?
Yeah, we can see the photos now.
Okay. So first thing I want to say is that I personally was kind of shocked when I knew that there were such places as concentration camps near where I live, because I really never even thought that here in Friuli Venezia Giulia, near Udine, where I live, could there have been such places. So I'm not the only one, because I spoke with many other people, young people like me, but even older people that they neither ever knew that there were concentration camps in Gonars and Visco. And so still now we don't really know much about them, because our region itself doesn't really give importance to these places, and I don't understand why, but also our guide told us that he had to go through some stuff to convince who should be in charge to highlight these places, convince them that they are worth it. So anyway, it was surely a great experience for us, and yeah, so we first went to Gonars, and we here are in the cemetery of Gonars. If I can go on, yeah, in the cemetery of Gonars, and this is the memorial chapel, and that's the only thing done with a certain rigor, if I have to say. And here lay the remains of more than 500 people from the concentration camp of Gonars. And yeah, it's not left much more than this. And again, you have to know there is this monument to go visit it. And yeah, many people don't know that there is, and I think it's also very beautiful for how it is made. And yeah, there are various signs and stele. And here we are in the actual ex-camp, concentration camp of Gonars. There's pretty much nothing left, just this low and not so long wall that was the basement for toilets. And yeah, there's just this little wall, and the field where it is, you can go. It is along one of the main streets, so it is for all to see, but very few, again, know what kind of place this was. And yeah, we can find this stele here, but there's no there's nothing that explains what they are for. So again, it's kind of forgotten, like nobody cares, and it's very sad. And here I wanted to capture the contrast between life, nature, that also if it's taking over the place, it actually represents life and death, I guess. So for what that war means, now that we know what it was, and yeah, so here we are instead in Visco. We couldn't go farther than this because, as you can see, it is closed, and it was a pity. And as you can see, also here there's nature that is like taking over, yeah, and almost breaking through. And what is mostly said is that who should be in charge to again to highlight these places. Seems like they just are waiting for nature to completely break through these buildings, just so that they don't have to care about it. And anyways, these buildings are remembered for their nearer past. so as a military camp and not a concentration camp. In fact, again, nobody knows, or few people know what it actually was once, and what happened here, and how many people were held hostage here. Were held here, and how many died. Again, we talk about hundreds of people. And yeah, it is said that we couldn't go farther here and also know more. But again, there's no interest from the region, from our state, to spend time and energies in places like this, and it is very really a pity. Yeah, I don't have much more, so I would say that's it.
Thank you, Sabrina, very much. Yeah, as you can see, we are starting to see this kind of commonalities that we also try to show in the exhibition, as for example, this loss, neglect of memory, but also this kind of transformation through nature of these places and locations. And next will be Alex.
Yes, hello everyone. I would like to thank all the participants for sharing their experience, and thank our mentors and trainers, Sasha and Sandra, and Documenta for organizing this this project. One of the participants, I think Martina mentioned, these kind of projects are very important. And I believe this project is particularly important because it explores the collective memory through art. So it combines the responsibility of remembrance through art, and therefore it can pull in various generations, especially the younger generation that are so keen on exploring the photography and filmmaking in various forms, short forms. And I will show the photos in my presentation from all the participants. And let me just share the screen. So can you see everything, the photos?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So the participants in my group come from 3 different countries, Slovenia, Croatia, and Serbia. And just like in the previous presentations, you will see some commonalities that the focus of the participants in photography have. First thing I would like to mention that most of the participants here focus on the micro world within the macro world. So we were taking photos of certain details. For example, this is one of the photos that I took. I'm not sure, can this, okay, it's loading. So this is the photo that I took. It's the photo of the tiles of an old concrete table that is in the middle of the concentration camp called Staro Sajmište. It's in the center of Belgrade. And then you can see also, I'm sorry, just not really good with how I can change the photo here. Just a second. Okay. Just a second. So this detail is from one of the participants, I believe, in Slovenia. And it's very interesting because she focused on the remnants of the concentration camp in detail. And We also have, this is Staro Sajmište, and this is how it looks today. And the building in the middle that you can see is the main building of the concentration camp. Another aspect of the photos that you will see in this group, the selection of photos, is that this idea of life that has continued and is present in the nature that has consumed the sites, or the life that is continued in the presence of human life and just everyday common things that we do. Around the sites, there are restaurants, there are buildings where people live. And one of the most interesting things for me was that this concentration camp that was there for Jewish community was held there before they were led to a site of execution, and also Roma people. And they're in the buildings around the site, and in this particular building in the center that you see of this photo, there are Roma people still living there. So for me, it was very, very interesting to see how life still goes on. And it sort of presented, like, for some of the participants, it presented a conflicting feeling. But for some, it was something that seemed very necessary and just natural. You can see on this photo as well how nature has taken over. It is a very common theme that reoccurs on these sites, and here as well, this photo was one that we discussed for quite some time, and we were all very, very moved by it. The swing that can represent the childhood and the innocence that we are looking through to this building that stands almost forgotten, the memory of what it carries, the heavy weight of the memory of the events that took place there. And for this series of photos, this is from the participants who visited Jasenovac, and the young woman, she focused on the nature and the healing power of the nature in her photos, which I found very, very striking and moving. Here you can see again, she focused on the water, and the water in general represents this symbol of cleanliness and cleaning all our sins. And we know that in Christianity and in many religions, water is seen as something that purifies. And she took this photo. The video, is it okay if I play the video?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So again, you can hear the nature sounds, and the water is moving, the breeze is there. It's very, very, the nature has taken over, and it's kind of cleaning the place. This is also from Staro Sajmište, and this is the restaurant that I mentioned. I believe Miljan took this photo, no, Slobodanka took this photo, and it's really interesting. One of the participants, Miljan, mentioned that he felt discomfort while taking photos of places that had people going about their day, and this discomfort kind of can be seen in some of the photos that and this photo represents it's a garden that is now being laid, but the shape of it's supposed to represent the mass graves that were there during this is a killing site in Jajinci. And of course, the poles that there are no flags, and there's no any kind of way to tell where this place is at the moment. And I would just like briefly to go back to some of the photos from the beginning, because I just sort of rushed through. And So as you can see, some of the participants focused on the details of the photos that are from the site. This is, I believe, the barbed wire that was used at the time. And then this is one of my photos. I kind of found this very, very striking because you can see the presence of the life today and of the humans today in this site, which was a killing site. And that was interesting. Okay, that's thank you all for listening, and that's all for me. I will now stop sharing the screen.
Thank you, Alex, very much. I just wanted to add that one of the also of the reflection that we made that came up more times is the role of the visitor in the places, or of the photographer in this case. So how to behave in spaces of memory, how who we are in spaces of memory becomes really, really important also in the kind of photos we are making, and how it's influencing what we do, and also what we decide to do in these places, and what is the role of the person being there at the moment. And also this is something that is influencing again this kind of categories that we thought about, this like healing process of memory in the places, or this kind of becoming part of the location, or modifying something in the location is also part of this conversation, I think. Okay, thank you. Next would be Svetlana.
Thank you, Alice. Hello, everyone. I will share my screen as well, and I will also share the perception of our group and what we talked about, and the thoughts we exchanged. So Antonia was in Germany, and she shared that it was a very emotional experience to her. It was horrible to realize what happened to these people who died and were buried in these places, on these places which were called herb garden plantations. But at the same time, the peacefulness of the nature and the warmth of the sunny day show on this photograph how the life is awakening, and that the grass might grow there where the prisoners work hard day by day and probably could even survive. Marco Doriga tried to capture what remained from the camps. In one of them, nothing but beautiful valley of flowers remained. For him, it was very nice to take photographs of places that were forgotten even by people who lived nearby. People just didn't know about this place. The process of taking photographs was like a digging into a history that no one cares about today. A picture of this card was taken from his family album. This card was sent by survived family members and has a double meaning. On one hand, signalizing of being well and an appeal to stay strong, to overcome the tempting times, as the statement Vinceremo proclaims, we will win. Marco Fornasin shared the experience was very new and rather different from what he has expected it to be. The flagpoles without flags, the normal life in the surroundings that just went on, and the billboards that do not mention the concentration camp where people suffered from lack of food and terrible conditions. But what clearly was attracting the attention, on the contrary, was a very bright advertising of the nearby Spar shop, which is also located in Palmova nowadays. Milena visited these places for the second time. She noticed again the beautiful landscape with hills and monuments with a nice nature. She could learn a lot about the locations and the details that we had not noticed before. The thoughts about the location found continuation in the details and also in the dialogues with other participants, which processed their thoughts through the photographs. Petra had also a very emotional experience. She said that she tried to transform the emotions through the photos, which she admitted was quite challenging for her. She noticed a big difference between emotion and the environment. At one place, Petra felt very empty and lost, but later she could see the details which were unexpected but very meaningful and restorative. Miloš said that he felt the sadness connected to the history and to the places he visited. He was taking pictures reflecting on the sufferings and tortures of the past. But today the concentration camp is not even marked and is not noticed anymore. As a historian, he was convinced that this can be changed. The private properties with shops should not be placed instead of memorials, but rather the memorials should be built and remembered. Nina could switch the emotional condition to the rational one, being rather focused on the weather, buildings, and the nature, on the moment of being there, on the faces which were portraited on the exhibition space. The life in the villages just went on as nothing happened before, but the faces remained in her memory. As for me, I took the pictures from my family album, and here you can see my grandmother. This is me and my cousin in Uzbekistan. I didn't know until I was 18 that my grandmother was born in the Russian Far East and that her parents fled from the North Korean regions to the Russian Far East from Japanese occupation, hunger, and high taxes. These clothings in the museum, which were portraited in South Korea, awake a thought of who was wearing these clothes and who was the person, how did they live, and what happened to them later. The same as this rice cookies, rice bread, which doesn't have any special meaning to those who don't know it, but those who know it, they recognize a flower on it called mugunghwa, which symbolizes the unity of Korea and the independence from Japanese occupation. These cookies are eaten by the Korean minority who live outside of South or North Korea nowadays after 50 years living abroad. This picture was taken 30 years later after the first one, the black and white, and I name it You Have Already More Than I Can Give You, because my cousin has not only the memory of the history of the family, but also his own one. And the collective memory can be transformed to the individual one, and the individual memory can be passed over to collective. So this process can be transformed and revived again and again. So we all went to different locations and different places, but what we all as a group share in common was that we could feel the location, and it helped us to focus on the details, the nature, the landscape, to focus on the difference between back and now, the state of the camps, about the value of ignorance in our society. And finally, it helped us to reflect on ourselves, our own perceptions, and which role we can play in helping these memories to meet today. And I want to quote our writer, Vladimir Kim, who lives nowadays and who tried to cover from the history and through his own biography. And he shared that in one Roman, his own biography. And I like this quote, which states They say being born and brought up in a foreign country cannot create any nostalgia. How can one yearn for the unknown? But in each of us, there is an ineradicable craving to know where we come from and what it is, the land of the ancestors, and who they are. The brothers in blood, are they still there? How could we satisfy our eternal desire to understand ourselves without this knowledge? The question I would like to finish my presentation today is meeting memories and what did we learn from the past to confront dehumanization today? Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing with us the reflection from your group and your personal photos also. That give like this, I think, added value to the reflection that we made. So thank you very much. And Zoran will be next.
Mhm.
So can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay, great. Just a minute. Okay, first of all, thank you. Thanks to my colleagues who exposed before me. I want to say thanks to all of those who organized this project, this event. And my aim today is to present the reflections and impressions of all of the members of my group. It's group number 4. So I think it's great that I'm the last speaker today, because we already heard more about locations. We went through it in a detailed manner. So now I can summarize some of the thoughts or reflections and impressions of my colleagues from the group. First of all, I need to say that all of the members of the group 4 agreed that this experience, taking part in this international workshop, was rather important for them, and that it was something different from what we are used to. So some of us visited those places for the first time. Some of us didn't, but some of us, for example, visited it for the first time with the guidance of an expert, of historians, etc. But all of us actually had this experience for the first time, this merging of some kind of walking through historical places and the art of photography. So that's what makes this experience unique and new and rather interesting. So the first reactions to the concept of the workshop and to the obligatory taking photos were different, and they varied from person to person. For instance, some of us just wanted to learn more about the past, about the crimes and war crimes that were committed around or in the places we live or where we are from. So we had a lot more curiosity in that sense, and it was bigger motivation to meet the history and learn more about it than to learn more about photography. So many of us, firstly, thought that this part connected with photography is actually something additional, something not so important or not the most important thing in this story. Some of us even had some of them, not me, but okay, some of us even had some negative prejudices. So they thought that this taking photos will make things more complicated, or that if we focus too much on taking photos and forget about everything else, we will lose our focus on history, on some direct meeting with the traces of history, that we will be preoccupied with the idea of taking photos and making it as good as we can, that as a result we will just miss something important, some important knowledge, information, sharing between or among the participants, etc. So however, even those who had the biggest discomfort when it comes to taking photos actually changed their mind in the end. So all of us in the end had a feeling that this taking photos was actually a really good thing, that it doesn't take anything from us. It just can add actually some specific quality to all of it. So on one hand, it's true that this how to say double focusing at the same time. On one side, it's this live contact with historical places and the places of suffering. On the other side, it is taking care of our visual feelings, making as good photos as we can. Well, that kind of double feeling, especially for those of us who were there for the very first time at those locations, maybe can be a bit confusing and feel like some kind of burden at the beginning, but actually when this first feeling passes, and when we take those photos, and later when we come home and the next day, and when we choose those photos, when we go through it more carefully, when we think about them, when we try to choose the best one, the most representative ones of our feelings, experiences, etc. Actually, it's then that we realize that the fact of taking our own photos actually made that experience stronger and longer, and somehow our impressions just stayed alive for a long time, and they are alive in the shape of those photos. And that's why we don't keep only some kind of document dedicated to the places we visited, but also some kind of testimony of our own feelings and emotions and reactions to those places. And that way, taking photos actually makes us less lonely in experiencing this kind of places, which have a rather brutal and sad history, and which provoke in us very confusing and different feelings, such as shock and trauma and anger and sadness and misbelief or something like that. So it appeared that this mission of documenting things, which some of us found not so promising at the very beginning, or some even said, I don't want to be a tourist on that kind of places, but in the end it appeared that this mission actually was very useful, and it gave us many new insights and feelings which we wouldn't have if we we didn't take our photos. So it may seem paradoxical, but in a way that fear of being detached because of taking photos was not actually needed, because in the end it seems that we are closer to that experience. We are closer to history and to our meeting with history if we have those photos. We realized that the most important thing in all of it is the fact that our individual, our personal vision of those places becomes shareable, becomes potentially useful and interesting for the other people. It can communicate with the other people, not only the people from our country who visited the same places, so we can just compare our visions and impressions visually, not only verbally, but also to the people from different countries, from other countries, from all over the world, because we don't only tell them about those places, some things which they actually can find if they want on the internet, etc. But we also tell them how we ourselves now, today and here, actually in this age, in this historical context, which is different, feel and capture the past we are talking about. So that's what we found the most important. Now, when it comes to the photos, I just have a brief presentation. Those are only the chosen photos from my colleagues. First ones belong to Álvaro Martínez García. The photos were taken at Jasenovac and Stara Gradiška. As we can see on the example of Álvaro's photos, and we will also see it later when it comes to other photos, we are not professional photographers, of course, none of us. It's not our profession, it's not our life choice or our job, etc. But some of us are nevertheless interested in photography, and all of us found it interesting to mix some learning about photography and learning about history. We actually can see that atmosphere which we are faced with when we came to those places in most of the photos I will show you. It's some kind of claustrophobic feeling, some kind of gray tones or dark tones which dominate these photos, as in Álvaro's case. So it's focusing on details. Those are not some representative photos as you can find in some historical books or etc. But the visual strategies we used in order to express our feelings towards this new knowledge and those places actually is focusing on details, this atmospherical view, and avoiding those typical touristic panoramas, photos, etc. And we also
sorry, I'm sorry to rush you, but we have around 1 minute left.
Okay,
so
it's the end. It's the end.
Thanks.
We just like to focus on those kind of colors. You will see the colors that dominate the color of the earth, or some dark tones, blue tones, and gray. In a way, you will see some more, but I will just go through it. Those are Álvaro's photos. Also this feel of abandoned buildings, some kind of deterioration, devastation is very present when expressing the feelings towards the visited places. This is Mirna Varga's photos. Nino Kovačić, also Jasenovac. The shadow play was also an important tool for transposing these feelings to photos. Samuele Treppo. So that's Italy. Also Silvia Scandura, Italy. In Silvia's case, we don't have those typical dark and gray tones. We have a very colorful and strong composition, but actually it has an aim to represent different layers of history. Simona Ostert and Tamara Kovačević, they took photos of Bučka and Maribor. This is a video of Tamara Kovačević. So the landscape is very nice, but this sound gives that feeling of something claustrophobic and not so pleasant. And what? Did somebody say something? I'm sorry. Okay, so at the end, those are my photos. I was accidentally the only one who used this diptych method, juxtaposing two different locations in pictures. So in the first photo, which I named Memorial Flowers, actually we can see the dandelions in the first photo, this colored one. Those are dandelions that look to the pieces of field which represent mass graves in Jajinci, the killing place Jajinci, and the second photo, we can see dandelions which are rather trembled and broken, and they are at the very center of Staro Sajmište concentration camp. So in a way, those photos represent the way our government and our society nowadays treat those places, because Jajinci is isolated, the periphery of Belgrade, and it's relatively well kept as a real memorial place, while Staro Sajmište, which is at the very center of the city, is really one abandoned place without almost any traces of the existence of war crimes, except for the one memorial plaque and one monument. And this is a photo called Recreation. I just wanted to play it with a famous Michelangelo's creation of Adam, because it is a detail from the sculpture which represents the pain people, we already saw it, the pain people felt while waiting to be executed in Jajinci. Jajinci killing place during the Second World War, and I just captured a small detail where the hand, which should be okay, go to the other hand, is actually something somewhere inside. It's stopped. It cannot go to the other person, but this dandelion gives some hints of hope, maybe. And the last diptych is also a juxtaposing of Jajinci on the first photo, the same monument, and the Sajmište concentration camp on the second photo, where we see how actually this concentration camp was close to the city center. This view that you can see through the monument is is actually the very center of the Belgrade. This is the river, and nowadays they make some kind of capitalist paradise out of it. So it's really close to the city center. While people were tortured and killed for years at Staro Sajmište, the rest of citizens of Belgrade lived relatively in peace, and every day they just went across the bridge, lived their ordinary lives, etc. So this is some kind of play with seeing and not seeing, because in the first photo it's the victim of the Nazis who just hides his eyes from the closeness of death, actually, from the closeness of killing. And on the other picture, we see that some passengers just go by and no one looks at the monument, even though it was 20th April 22, the official Remembrance Day here in Serbia. So that's it. That was everything I wanted to say. I hope it wasn't too long. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Zorana. Well, we are running around 5-6 minutes late, so I wouldn't prolong the conference longer. Something that I would like to ask, maybe if Saša or Sandra have some closing words, or if not, I would like to again add this website, that with this Instagram link where we have all the photos collected. And also I would like to ask you to continue these conversations on the site, if you want, if you have any question, any doubt or something that you want to discuss further, you can do it also under the photos or commenting, and maybe to open some kind of online discussion about these topics. And I can see now in the chat that unfortunately not everybody can see all photos because of the Instagram platform. But I'm very sorry. Like, the Instagram way was the easiest for us to upload all these photos. But as we mentioned at the beginning, I hope that we are going to have an exhibition in Udine with some of the photos in physical form. And again, if COVID will permit, also maybe to be able to travel with the exhibition in the countries involved in the project. But we'll see how the situation will go on with the restrictions. And that would be it from me. I guess maybe there is a question from Maria. Maybe I can give you the possibility to speak. Maria, if you have a question. Mm-hmm. Can you hear us? Maybe not. Okay, so if we don't have any more comment, we are running a bit late. So I would like to thank you once again for being with us, to thank our participants, to thank the ones that were willing to share with us their experience, and also once again to thank Sandra and Saša, our trainers. And just a brief reminder for the participants that you aren't finished for today. Unfortunately, but we are meeting for our evaluation in 5 minutes. So we'll see on the other link. For the public, thank you very much for following, and we'll to the next time. Thank you very much.